Hey everyone, we're continuing on in our series, Points of Interest, and we're studying the Old Testament. For September, we're really heavy into Genesis and through October as well. And this week, we are reading Genesis 11 through 16, and we're going to get into a story that I want to focus on called the Tower of Babel or the Tower of Babel, depending on how you want to pronounce that. And there's this amazing narrative about how everyone got together and they're starting to build this tower, and they feel like they can get to the sky and they can be like God. And the Lord came down, and what he saw was that there's nothing, he actually reflected that there's nothing that they cannot accomplish if they are in unity. And so verse 7 is what stood out to me as I was doing reflection about how our understanding is and who God is and who we are. Verse 7 says, come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they will not understand each other. So the verse before, verse 6, was when there is nothing that they plan to do that will be impossible for them. So God recognizes that in unity, the people will be almost unstoppable. And then 7, let's confuse them with language. And we live, if you're not part of our in-person church community, we live in Mississauga, in the Greater Toronto area. And in our church, there's 90 different nations represented. So lots of different languages that are spoken. In our region, there's actually over 200 different nationalities that all exist here. It's a beautiful, diverse place where we learn from each other. We have music and art and food that influence each other's cultures. And we're actually creating our own unique culture here in the GTA. That's very different than places maybe where the culture has come from and brought here. It's now adapted. And the culture that used to exist here has adapted. And it's really a beautiful thing. What I reflected on in this is that what I see is that the diversity here is that God actually cursed them with diversity. Now let me explain that. They're not cursed necessarily just with diversity. They're cursed with the disunity that diversity can bring at times. When diversity and unity exists, it is really one of the most beautiful things. And that's what I love on that side. And we have here at the church, we have our Foods of the World celebration. Everybody shares with each other where we worship and we eat together. And it's it's a whole mix. We have our celebration called Karasaga, and you can go all over the city and see that on a greater level. But there are times when people with diverse opinions, diverse backgrounds, diverse life experiences can't find a way to exist in unity. And what God recognizes, if we bring that kind of diversity, it actually stops accomplishing what man and women have set their mind to. And the reflection that I had was that, are there pieces of our lives, in our church, in our families, in our workplaces, where we have ceased to let diversity be our strength? Because it can be with all these different experiences if we're in unity. And diversity has become like this curse where it actually thwarted their biggest plans because it was disunity in diversity. And there are times when we can't see our way to see the other person's angle or point of view or life experience. And so it brings us into disunity. And what you'll see is it actually scattered people all over the place. And what God called it out, if there was unity, where there's nothing that we couldn't accomplish. Where there's disunity, the people left the project. So are there places that we as a church, we in relationship, need to lay down what we would have in just our perspective and our life lived experience and say, it's not most important what you've lived, it's not most important what I've lived, it's what's most important is that we find the common ground and we can move together in unity. So I would love to hear your reflections on that, how you've experienced that positively, have you experienced that negatively, how you understand that through the lens of the story of the Tower of Babel. So leave a comment, or if you're reading on in chapters 11 through 16, there's lots of other stuff that God's gonna lay on your heart. So let's study these chapters together as we move on through this series called Points of Interest.